All
So,
right, you guys. Welcome back. Welcome to the next Two Autistics Talk Money. Last week, we were kind of in my wheelhouse talking about the stuff that I like to talk about having to do with money. And this week, we are in Andrew's wheelhouse. So he's going to take the lead on the episode this week.
so perfect. So the thing that people wanted to talk about a little bit last time was more just unique and maybe different ways to make money, which I'm a huge fan of beyond, the fact that, I actually have a good friend of mine who's in Thailand, and apparently does everyone know everyone pretty much uses Gmail, and they have the promotions, the primary inbox. And apparently his Gmail just thinks that all I want to do is sell, because all my emails go to the promotions tab for him in Gmail, even though we've been friends for 15 years. So the point is, if there's a unique way to come up and make money off something, I'm really all for it. So my one of my and I always like to say, if you're good at something, there's going to be somebody who's willing to pay for it. And a lot of times it's not that complicated. A lot of times it's really just having a good idea and finding people who value it well. And if, both those things work out, then sure, marketing and money and doing all those other things can help, but you have to have a half decent idea first, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
one of my favorite ones is, or just some in general tips too, is there's a lot of places you might either shop or have memberships or things like that. If you recommend them, there's referral fees, referral codes. And one of my favorite stories that I was thinking about in particular to this one is I sold stamps for a profit. So there's stamps.com, and they had this where you would get $20 in free stamps for everyone you referred. And I was able to post my link a lot online, and a bunch of people signed up because they got free stamps too. So I had thousands and thousands of dollars in postage stamps that I sold at a discount to doctors' offices, because where else can you get discounted stamps, right? They were real stamps. I wasn't paying anything for them. And it was just something that kind of happened to work out. So that's one of my like short, really favorite ones that I'll tell people, is that I made money selling, free stamps I got for free at a discount to doctors' offices. But again, if anyone wants to, interrupt me or mention something, just unmute. I like to be interrupted. And any ideas people have, but also, when I was, teenager, I would still, actually, I think there are people, Becca, who don't know how to burn a CD, which is sad. There's too many young people, but I would sell CDs for $1, right? And just to everyone, I get the new CD that came out, I borrowed it from somebody, and then I'd, sell it, or DVDs too. I guess that's kind of illegal, but
Yeah,
so
that's
try to
illegal.
stay away from things that are, illegal. But again, in general, one of my favorite sayings is like, there's people who make money selling chocolate covered roaches. So if somebody can make money doing that, then if you have a good idea, you can probably make money doing just about, anything. If there's something people want, there's probably a way to profit off it.
Absolutely. So you guys, you guys wanted to talk about the different ways that we could possibly make money. Andrew's talking to you about some of the more interesting schemes that he's had. Have you guys had any successful opportunities or successful times when you were making some money? And what was it about that made it stop, or how did that end for you guys? Anybody?
For
No.
me, yes, I had some tips about. For me, I'm I'm not from the US. I'm from Brazil, and here we have, for example, as I speak English, I have I had plenty of opportunities to teach English, private classes, also translating documents or some other things, making freelance services. As I am also a lawyer, could draft contracts, talking about CDs now, of course, you can download the songs, the music, the songs, and share with someone, or editing videos. But one thing that makes me really thinking about is how to not only to earn money, but also to save money. For example, I read a really good book about it's called the Driver and the Millionaire. That's the true story of a businessman who has participated in the studies, the marshmallows study, which is very famous. You know, when the people stands for a long time to get the marshmallow instead of getting the marshmallow, because when you wait more to get the marshmallow, you earn more prizes. And he talks about saving money instead of getting all the opportunities. For example, instead of eating Big Mac all the time that you spend a lot of money, you can cook at home. You can get all the ingredients and make a sandwich at home, or Big Mac yourself at home, that you spend less money. My biggest concern, as I don't know in the US, but here in Brazil, everything is quite expensive to buy, is how to save money, how to, instead of spending a lot of money, review all my spending habits and save money.
Right. It's complicated, right? Saving money and kind of, especially now when we talk about the cost of living, right? Really expensive to just be alive right now. And so how do we save money when all the money we're making is going to keeping us alive, right? Or so that even if have a job and we're earning money from our job, most of those earnings go directly to our bills and the things that we need, and leaving us very little to save and very little to spend on what we want, right? So how do we kind of do that, and that kind of thing? And I think that's some basic budgeting. But I think a lot of us on the spectrum also struggle with some impulse control about spending. I think that's an issue. I think that across the board on the spectrum, we kind of struggle with. So thinking about that in terms of the Big Mac, right? And fighting the impulse to have the Big Mac and saying, no, if I wait and I cook at home, I can save the money, right? And that kind of thing. Andrew, do you have any good ideas about when you're working on a small budget and how to save and ways to save?
So actually, no, so I was literally thinking the exact same thing, that the vast majority of it really does truly, especially on the spectrum, really come down to impulse control. I just think that's such a large part of it. And, you know, what I find is budgets are useless. I don't have a budget myself. I don't think most people do. I also just think they're not that helpful. I mean, there's some good rules to follow, but really it's about making a repeatable habit that you can keep doing. Right? Like there's no, you know, saying that you're only going to spend this much money on food this month and tracking it all the time. I think unless you're in a situation where you need to literally count the way I think about budgeting is very much the same as being very overweight and needing to go on a very restrictive diet, right? Sure, it's something you can do to maybe teach you good habits and something that can be repeatable. But at the end of the day, once you're done, for example, losing the weight, right, it's more important to maintain that really good habit.
Right.
Right. So, you know, because it's not sustainable to keep dieting like you are to lose weight forever. It's not sustainable for somebody to have a budget forever. But if you can eat well without thinking about it, right? If you can, very similarly, you know, save money without thinking about it and really create those good repeatable habits. I think that's what's really important. And I'll also add just a couple other things, otherwise I'll just forget. And that is that, you know, having, you know, it's not that helpful to also don't take shame on yourself either for like, you spent too much money on this, you spent so much money on that. I think it's really helpful. So something that I do is I look every, let's say every quarter, right? Or every couple months. And I look, you know what? I guess I am spending a little bit too much money on this. And okay, instead of maybe buying 6 energy drinks in the morning, I can buy 4, which is probably still way too many and more than I need. But that's very easy, that's repeatable. And I didn't make myself feel bad for buying 6 before and feel bad that I spent too money, right? Like, for example, if you don't have money saved and somebody says to you, well, you should have had money saved, you should have had an emergency fund. That does absolutely nothing to help you when you're already in a crisis, when you already, need the money, right? So it's very important to realize that, shit happens and to try to prevent it in the future, but to not just completely ignore the problem because you feel bad. One tip I want to give is actually there's an app. So there's an app I do recommend. It's called Truebill. Has anyone heard of it? Or
No.
So one of the things that I think is very easy and repeatable is if you look on a credit card, you probably have expenses on there. That raise your hand or interrupt me if you have an expense on your credit card or a monthly expense that you haven't canceled, even though you don't use it anymore.
So embarrassed.
Becca, Truebill will call for you and cancel for you.
Oh, wow. Really?
Or yeah. So like we use them for a gym membership. So they have like, yeah, exactly. So I think that's like an amazing app for especially us on the spectrum. Most people don't like yelling at bill companies like I do. But like, or like with the gym, for example, they told us, I think we had to submit the form, but they told us exactly what to do. We didn't have to call anyone or figure it out. And it just lets you know, hey, you're spent $100 more on food this month than you did last month. Oh, well, I don't know. If you know the reason in your head, that's fine. You can move on. But I find noticing those trends are really helpful and being able to do actionable things. So I think Truebill's free, but I think the part where they cancel stuff for you is like, it's not expensive, but we figured out we were ahead after the gym membership being canceled. So,
but yeah, there's that kind of sneaky stuff, right? The other one that sneaks up on me all the time is when you do like a 3-month free trial and then your 3 months is over and they start charging you and you don't realize you're you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't even phase you and it just goes on. I do that all the time too. I guess that's another one. It's a repeatable habit I can stop, right?
So now
and the other thing I want to talk about that you didn't mention is real numbers. Right? Real numbers is the reason that I ask people to do budgets. I don't ask them to keep a budget necessarily every month, but I ask them to do an initial budget because real numbers matter. Okay. So what we do in our heads as autistics is we conflate. We make numbers bigger than they have to be. We make our problems bigger than they have to be. And we make scenarios larger than they need to be. So when we don't deal with real numbers in our budgets and we're not dealing with our actual income and the actual spending and our, what the real rules are surrounding our money. And for example, if we're on SSI or SSDI, right, that we're not hitting that limit, that we're making too much that month, right? All of those things, we need to know that. And if you aren't working and making decisions based off of real numbers and your current reality, we're in trouble, right? That's how we start trouble that becomes bigger trouble. So I do encourage at least an initial budget, just so you know where you are, like what your reality is, right? Before you start making decisions about changing your spending.
Exactly. And again, I mean, I just came up with this in between our last meetings, right? The wanting to go on a diet, right? For example, and just looking at what you eat to assess the situation. And again, the budget can work well in the, in the long term, but I don't, people shouldn't feel bad if they're having good habits and they're saving money and they don't have a budget. Or what I also find too, talking with a lot of people is they're like, I don't understand this stuff. I don't understand money. And it's neurotypical. It's everyone. Nobody does. That's why people like me have a job, right? And there's way too many of us. And so, but one thing, is that like, don't feel bad if this stuff is confusing. A lot of it's really meant to be. And a lot of people like me make it a lot more confusing than it's supposed to be. I mean, just look at my background on this Zoom if you want an example, right? But when it comes down to it, it's, it's really not as complicated as people like me make it out to be.
Right. Well,
right?
that's true. And I think that we assign it language that makes it complicated, right? We assign it all these big terms. And if you don't know the terms definitions, it's scary, right? And all of that stuff. And so, but I do think it's that we have to understand really just the raw basics of it. Most of us, our finances aren't that complicated, right? We don't have enough money for them to be that complicated. We just don't, right? And so just understanding the basic realities of what it is that your income is, right? And knowing what your spending is realistically, right? And that's the beginning of any saving, right? Is understanding your needs versus your wants, and how are you spending on your needs versus your wants, right? And cleaning up that mess in a very realistic way. Not to say you should punish yourself or anything like that, but just knowing, right? I don't know if you talk about this at all, Andrew, when you work with your clients, but I talk about it often in terms of priority setting, right? If you are making a certain amount of money and you're using your energy to make that certain amount of money, right? You need to make sure that the stuff that you're spending that money on are the things that you actually prioritize, right? And that you're not impulsively spending your money on things in the moment rather than, and to start really giving value, value to the energy that you're putting in to make the money, right? I often will take people down to like, what is it that you do for a living? I fix computers. Okay, how many computers do you fix in a week? This many. Okay, how many in a month? This many. Okay, so when you get your monthly paycheck is worth fixing that amount of computers. Right? Yep. Because it puts it into your realistic daily living. This is what I do with my energy every day, right? And it attaches it to the money that we attach value to now, right? Because where you're spending your energy and to make your money is a really important piece of that money making, right?
Yeah. So one thing that I really find too, 100% agree is I like to go over with people, what is your bare minimum cost where you need to live? Or if you can't make that much money a month, right, that you can't live, you can't feed yourself or your family, you can't pay rent, your bills. So that's the budget that's also really attainable too, right? Call it the bare minimum, right? Because I can add up your rent, I can add up your bills. We could do a low budget on food, right? Mm-hmm. And if you say, okay, well, if this is how much I have, then obviously some left over, you want to be able to do something versus, let's say, ramen noodles all day, right? And then there's the rest that can go into another account. But that's really where I find, again, the repeatable habits work really well. So if you can get paid and you can split it in between two bank accounts so you don't even see it, right? Mm-hmm. Then it's not there. I don't carry cash because if I do, I spend it. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that's a lot of people as well. I think I know some people where it's the opposite though, right? Where they want to keep the cash, right? Or they'll keep $100 bill because they never want to break the $100 bill because it's like nice and shiny. So I think knowing that, but I guess, so I do have some other ways to make money. I know we got sidetracked, but
sorry.
No, it's good. So, so one thing is Black Friday is coming up next week and everyone buys stuff online. I don't think did I mention Ebates last time, Becca?
No.
Or Rakatuin? Are you familiar with it?
I'm sorry, did you say eBay or something else? I didn't quite catch the
Ebates.
Oh, Ebates.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you said eBay.
So it's called Rakatuin now too. And what you have to realize too is if something exists in the world, somebody's making money off it, and it's probably someone like me. No, but I'm half joking, all seriousness. So when you go to these websites like that list deals and sales that exist, they get money when you click on that link and you buy something on that site. So for example, let's say there's a sale, Best Buy computers, and I'm looking for Black Friday deals. So a popular site, for example, is dealnews.com. If I'm looking to buy something, I might check there. They'll tell me what's on sale. They get a couple percent because I went and bought the computer at Best Buy because I found it on Deal News. So when I click that link, it's tracked. So there's a site called, it was eBay, it's Rakuten. What they do is they actually give that money back to you, and you have a Chrome extension. So for example, depending on the store, you might get 10% back on a certain day, or 3 or 5% back, and it just goes into your PayPal account. So for the things that everyone's about to buy on Black Friday anyway, talk about a way to make money. I mean, you're getting paid to shop. It doesn't quite work like that, but it's almost better than cash back because it's what you're buying literally anyway. And I find I didn't remember it unless if everyone uses Google Chrome, there's a Google Chrome extension, and it'll just, when I go to a site, it'll pop up and say, you'll get 5% back, right? For shopping at this site. So that's just an easy way to also have some things like that also be your disposable fund money, right? So if that goes into a PayPal account and you make money from that, have that build up and save for something, that you truly want. So that's a really easy way to, make money. Or even better, help your parents order things, get their credit card, and keep the rebates to yourself, right? So, or buy the gifts for other people, and just keep that, I think it's called Rakuten now. It was Ebates, Ebates. So that's one of my favorite almost free money tips.
Cool. All right. What about anybody else? Does anybody have any questions about making money? Or anything they want to talk about? I always think about.
I have one question I'd like to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, there are a lot of places out there that claim they can help you make money. The problem is not all of them are legit. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of pyramid schemes, but there are some out there. What I'm wondering is, do you guys have any experience on knowing what things out there are pyramid schemes and which ones are actually legit as far as making money goes?
Well, so in a very sad, twisted way, pyramid schemes are sadly somewhat legit, right? They call it multi-level marketing now. But for the most part, I mean, do you have an example of one where you ran into and you found out it wasn't legit? And I could give some good tips for ways to look out for that. But if you have a good example.
Well, I can tell you one example I had. One time I went to what was supposed to be called a meeting where you could learn how to start your own business and make money from it, but they were kind of vague. That they were vague and they did not tell you too much about what they were doing. But the one thing I noticed that was odd is that the people there, they did not behave professionally. They seemed to almost, God, how do I describe this? But you'd ask them questions and they try and sidestep your questions. Like one individual, I asked her, okay, what made you decide to join this program? And her response was something to the effect, you asked many questions. We should meet up sometime for coffee and discuss it then. And I'm thinking, why are you refusing to answer questions? Well, turns out I talked to some people, the guy who told me about the club, and he told me apparently she was just doing what she was trained to do. But what happened was the meeting was involved with this club called Amway, which has been around for years. Now, the stories I've heard, a lot of people who've gotten involved with Amway, they have not enjoyed it because apparently they have to get a certain number of followers to even get a little bit of money, and the people above them get tons of money, which is why they consider it a pyramid scheme. But the long story short, some of these are better than others. But from my personal experience, I decided not to go with this particular type of company because I sense they set it up to where they make a lot more money than you do. And they give the impression that you can make a lot, but they're really using you to get more money for themselves. And they don't tell you that.
So one thing so that's, now they call them multi-level marketing. That sounds right. And So one of the things is, that again, you get people under you, but there's legitimate companies that do sell that way. But I find it has to be something where if you shouldn't have to write a check to get started. That's usually a bad sign.
I was gonna say.
Or there's a large sales pitch, or really when they come out of the gate telling you they're going to make you so much money. The other thing that I find really helps us autistics with these types of schemes is they ask really open-ended questions when they're trying to solicit you, which I really fail at. And I assume everyone else on this call does, the really open-ended questions. So I find, that that is a really just great way to kind of avoid them. So I had somebody who was trying to sell me, and I actually reached out to them on LinkedIn, and then they're like, oh, I want to talk to you about this, blah, blah. And they're like, so tell me, what does this mean? And beyond the fact that just like fucking annoyed me, honestly, right? Like it was like, I had no idea what they were trying to do. I feel like with a lot of these multi-level marketings, they should be able to answer your direct questions really well. And if they don't, it's probably not a good sign. But things like, has everyone heard of Tupperware?
Yeah, I believe so.
Tupperware containers, right? Or that's sold like a pyramid scheme, market level marketing, right? You can but they've been around for a long time, right? They have good products, right? But that doesn't mean you should sell them. But you can also, but if you like the product, if you like it and you're obsessed with Tupperware, then you're going to be really good at selling it, and it's a good thing. But I find if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is a good way to look at it. And it really shouldn't be that easy. And you shouldn't have to write a lot of money or buy a lot of inventory. And I know Miriam has a question, or there's a hand raised.
I had a friend who I did a little bit of the Amway, but through another, just through a networking group. It was called Arbonne, and they sell health products. And I do actually like their products. I've bought some from, I haven't really sold anything, but I like to buy their products because I like them. And also, they don't have whey protein in it, which I've discovered I've had an intolerance to, which is also one of the reasons why I like the products. That doesn't have whey protein in it. So I guess it really depends whether or not you like the products.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good, one of the other tips I think that should go along with it. I agree with you 100%. My number one tip is if they are asking you for money, then no. That's it. If they out of the gate are asking you for money, then they're not looking to work with you. They just want your money. Right.
Yeah. I thought it's different with
products,
them,
right?
Versus Amway. It seemed like when I do something with Amway, it seemed to be more about the money and and people rather than really the products.
Right.
Whereas with Arbonne, it's more heavily on their products rather than, making money. Right. They have the making money stuff, but it's not a huge focus like Amway was. It's I was yeah. So it's a little bit different with them.
But if you enjoy the product, I think in these pyramid schemes, the best benefit is if you like the product enough, you're going to get a lot of product for cheap, right? So you have to like it enough to be able to want it in your life like that, and to be able to share your passion with it in order to really sell it.
But the kind of funny thing is that people think of it as a pyramid scheme, but people don't think of buying a membership to Costco as being a pyramid scheme. But buying, a membership to buy products of a particular brand suddenly is. So it's because it's not in the store.
Yeah. So here's the way to look out for it.
The gray line is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll also bring up Miriam. Sorry, I'll bring up gig workers, or you can go right after this because I want you to answer that question in the chat. So people who are doing pyramid schemes will use that exact example of it's just like Costco. It's just like being a business owner. The way to really tell a multi-level marketing or a pyramid scheme apart is where the primary goal and way to make money is to have people under you. Right. And to get more people under you to make more money off them, not for you to be you. So that's been my experience, and what they all have in common is that, it's called an upline, right? Or you get people, again, working below you and making money off them. And if you try to very instantly kind of get recruited, right, in order to do that, that's how I would, that's a good way to know if it's a multi-level marketing scheme, right? Like Costco doesn't try to get a bunch of people to also sell Costco memberships and have their own Costcos and then people under their own Costcos, right? So that's the difference. And that would be the key thing I would look out for is, do they want you to recruit people too, right? Even if they say they don't. If that's the primary way, then that's multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
I don't like Costco. I think they're very classist towards people who are especially not Costco members, because I have to wait till every time my sister comes up from New York to use her Costco account. And I'm like, Claire, don't you think this place is classist because they don't let you leave? You just want to buy food at the front desk or something?
Mm. Well, let's talk about gig work for a little bit. Okay. So, because Miriam, you and I have that in common. That's how we both make our money, is through gig work. So I guess I'll define it for everybody first. When we talk about gig work, we mean really kind of the economy the way that it is right now. So if you are a freelancer, meaning that you do freelance work, you work for yourself, right? And you get hired to do small projects for other companies, right? And so you're doing little gigs for little companies, but you don't work for one particular company, you work for yourself, right? And that is another way of making money, another way of being employed. But it does have, it has a lot of benefits, but it also has risks with it, which is that something that Miriam talked about on the side there, which is that they don't always pay you fairly, right? Because you're not an employee 100% of the time, you don't get health insurance, you don't get other things that come along with a regular job. And they do get to state a price with you, and you get to negotiate that price. And oftentimes we get kind of lowballed when you do gig work, because you don't have a history, right? You're not building on that history. But that is another way to make money, right? So Miriam, now that you're doing gig work kind of stuff, how are you finding it to be? Where are you finding to be the pitfalls in terms of making money?
I wanted to bring up a specific kind of gig work though, because some gig work is very well paid, but it really depends on what you get. So there's like, if you do a per project, you're paid and you have a contract and negotiate it, like people who do event photography can make hundreds of dollars a day if they negotiate the prices, and they, there is money in gig work. But the kind of gig work that starts to feel like a pyramid scheme, but it's not, it just resembles it in the way that some of these sites make you pay up front and pay you very low amounts, or either or. Because I wanted to bring up, when I was looking in the gig economy at first, sites like WAG make you pay before you go on there. WAG is a site for dog walking. I think it was $25. You had to pay $25 before you could even enter their site. Or there was another site, Bark, I think it was, but that was for like different kind of, not, even though it sounds like it's dog walking too, that was something else. And Upwork too. Upwork makes you pay a fee to talk to people about getting jobs. So you're not necessarily even hired. But then you also have other gig work where they don't pay you unless they accept the work. So I actually came across like one company that specifically, I feel like they target autistic people, because what they do is they're marketing it as for autistic people and trying to, do all these like things like giving you a free Lindy account and all these like side benefits that don't have that much financial value. But then they pay you a few dollars for something that takes hours. And Amazon does the same thing, where they have these little jobs that pay you a few cents. Or even Postmates, their whole model is around, you have your own business, but you don't really. And when I did Postmates for a bit, the amount that you spend on gas and wear and tear in your car, I was actually at a loss, even though the revenue was a few $100s. When you start subtracting gas and stuff, unless you're going to do it on a bike or walking, it doesn't actually come out as a profit when I did it for a couple weeks. I mean, it really depends on how far they send you. But there's other gig work that you can make decent money from it. But I think it's something else to be aware of, that you really have to look at how much they're paying you, and are they paying you for the quality of the work, because that can get especially problematic if they can deny you payment based on if they find it satisfactory. It's something to watch out for. But then other things can pay well if, like, I do this one job now where I get paid $100 a month just to write a blog post, and it doesn't take me that long. So like gig work like that can pay really well, but then you have something like WAG where you have to pay before you even get on their site, even though it's not a pyramid scheme, it's just also making you pay up front.
Right. Well, that's how they make their money, right? They
Yeah.
make their money off of collecting all of that data together in one place for your convenience, right? And you're being charged for that convenience. And so we do have to be careful of all of those things because they don't always pay back for what you're putting in, right? They're asking you to make a certain amount of an investment in their product. And if you're not getting what you want from that product, then you're wasting your money, right? It's the same idea as that. And so there are those things out there I mean, I think in general, I really think that if something is very easy, if it's easy for you to get started doing, if it's easy for you to get your first paycheck, if it's easy for you to just kind of jump right into it and they don't really look at anything, like more than likely that's going to be a place that's really just looking to make money off of whatever it is that they're doing. And it's not some place where you're going to really find fulfillment as a human being, right? And so we need to think about those pieces too. Because you and I do gig economy stuff, and you can do stuff like like what Miriam was talking about, but then we can also do things where some people do copy editing and they do gig work and they make their own rate and they charge what they decide they're going to charge. And that is the piece of it that I think also gets tough for us in terms of gig economy, is naming our value. Right? Understanding that we do have value and that we can charge a certain amount of money for our skill sets, and that just because we want people to like us doesn't mean we have to do it for free or that we have to do it for less. Right? And kind of creating those standards for yourself, knowing your value, and then keeping yourself up with your value, making sure you hold other people to that standard. Right? And that's the other way that people sneak in and kind of take advantage. Right? So I think as autistics, we have to watch for that as well.
I actually have a small story going off of that. The first time I made a website for someone else, they asked me if they wanted to be paid per hour or a flat rate. And I actually talked to a professor to help set the rates that worked in that industry. And we figured out that like $200 seemed like a good rate to make a website. Like that seems like a lot of money to pay someone to make a website. But then the client wanted so much work. I thought it was only going to take like 10-20 hours, so that would have been $10 or so an hour at $200. But then the person just kept asking for more and more work but we already made the deal. And if I had actually charged them hourly for the same thing that they proposed but just not taking the flat rate, I actually would have made more money. So I also think when you're doing gig work, keep in mind you can still ask for an hourly rate. I mean, there's photographers and videographers and editors that do that too, that they'll work a job that they negotiate themselves, but they still charge hourly. Sometimes when you charge a flat rate, you can undercut yourself because you don't know how many hours you're actually going to end up working on it.
Absolutely. And in fact, I charge hourly almost exclusively. There are a few things that I charge a flat rate for, but you have to, right? Because I am of the belief that my time has value. Right. And if my time has value, then it's not just the product that I'm giving them, but also the time it takes for me to put it together and the research or whatever, and the expertise that I have to put it together. Right. So making sure that we're valuing our skill sets in a realistic way. Right.
Or
if we're going to be doing gig economy work.
Or like one thing that I do, especially with, contract work, is if I'm charging a flat fee, and I do a fair amount of charging a flat fee, but before I do that, there's a very clear scope of work. It's here is what I am going to do. Here is exactly what you are going to get in this time frame for this fee. So for example, with the website, right? I would have said, well, here's what you're going to get. It's based upon this many hours of work, blah, 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 and if they want more, well, that's outside the scope of the contract, right? And so again, that's the reason I do it, because, well, then too, if I can, finish it a lot quicker, I can finish it a lot quicker. But also just setting very clear expectations. I find it's a good thing just to do in every aspect of life. But then somebody has a clear They can't say, well, you didn't give me what I was asking for. No, you signed or agreed to the document that said, here's exactly what I'm going to do. And if you want more than that, I'm happy to do it, but you're going to need to pay me for that.
Right.
There is something else I'd like to mention.
Mhm.
Okay, I noticed it's not quite the same as pyramid schemes, but there are some situations where you can at least make sure people don't take advantage of you and still do it in a way that's ethical. For example, I worked in Subway up until recently with COVID, and I remember there was one time we had one manager where she had this bad habit where she'd ask you to come in last minute when you'd already had the day off. Well, here's what I did. Sometimes I would have plans before that, and I wouldn't always know when they'd want me in, but if I had plans, I had plans. So what I'd purposely do is I'd leave my phone off so that if I saw her message later on after I'd already made plans, I just would tell, well, I'm sorry, I just saw your message. And I do that sometimes to avoid having him make me come in last minute when she'd already given me the time off in advance. Because you work in fast food companies, sometimes they'll want you to come in last minute if someone's sick or if it gets busy unexpectedly. So for me personally, I do that sometimes just because I don't like being taken advantage of. And if I do it that way, it's at least an ethical way you can maintain your integrity without having people take advantage of you. Now, I will say it's not perfect. I mean, sometimes I sense some people resent it, but I don't care simply because I can do my job the best when I can plan things accordingly and not have people take advantage of me. So at least when I did that, it worked well for me.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we have any other like last minute tips or ideas or thoughts about making money?
Do you guys know of any high level, say, entrepreneurs or people like that who you could possibly interview to give their experience by chance, or is that not doable?
No, I think that'd be doable. We can do some reach outs if we want to. Is there any particular kind of entrepreneur you'd be interested in?
Particularly one, okay, first of all, one, they have, not only do they have money, but two, they're not afraid to tell the truth and tell the stories of struggle to show how they finally got to where they are. Because I don't like people, if you ask them specific questions and they just give you vague, superficial answers that don't really answer your question. I like hearing specific details so that whatever questions you ask them, they'll answer it for you and admit the times they had struggles. That's the kind of interview I'm looking for, because at least I know those people are honest and trustworthy.
That's a great idea. Andrew and I will do some reach outs. We'll do some talking. Probably not for the very next one, maybe for in the next year, but we'll do our best to get somebody to give up some time.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. All right. Anybody else with any other questions? We have like another 15 minutes, or that's kind of it. Yeah, Lucas, you have a question?
Do you think you could save enough money with universal basic income if people got $2,000 to $4,000 each month who are really poor in this country?
I don't know enough about that. Andrew?
Andrew Yang. Just research Andrew Yang from on YouTube, the guy who ran for president.
I don't think the idea of universal basic income is to be able to receive money. The idea of universal basic income is basically, well, that everyone gets enough money to live. So Becca, everyone would get $2,000-$3,000 a month, right? No matter, let's say it's 3,000. Everyone would get $3,000 a month, no matter how much they make. No matter, they don't need to apply SSI, SSDI, anything like that. It's just everybody, in the country has enough money to cover so they can live. So, and there are some, and again, even as a libertarian, there are some actual good, there's some good information that actually really says that might actually be cheaper, than any of the current systems. Because if you think about it, sure, we're not necessarily handing people that money every month, but we're, it's complicated to administer all these benefit programs and all of these things.
What we pay, it costs us so much to pay the people to do the job, to oversee it and all the interviews and all that crap, right?
Correct. And just, every states have these different programs and then people end up getting money. So there's actually the thought that although it sounds like a lot, in theory really wouldn't cost that much more to do a universal basic income at some level. So anyway, so it's an interesting idea. I don't think the idea is for people to save money. I think the idea is just so that we're decent human beings.
Yeah, so that people aren't dying on the street while other people have 10,000 million yachts all over the place. Some kind of
there's also
equality,
other
right?
countries that already tried it. Like there are studies on it that showed it improved quality of life. Because I remember reading about it in one of my college classes even before Andrew Yang started talking about it, because it is a thing that other countries do. I mean, personally, I think it would be better if we improved healthcare, because that's one of the biggest expenses that a lot of people have, and a lot of people fall in the gaps with that. But there is research out there on it that have, not just theoretical, but because other countries have tried it, seeing how it worked.
Interesting. Well, I learned something new today.
Yeah, it is. It's no, I think it's a good. I don't know if it'll happen here. It would be nice if it did, but on a lot of scenarios, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? So
I agree, because I actually, there's a guy I talked to who lived in Norway for a couple of months back, and one of the things I know he told me is that you don't have to worry about paying for healthcare in his country. If you're sick, you can just go to a hospital or whatever, and they'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about anything else. They've got it taken care of. I think everyone contributes a certain amount of money in that country to universal healthcare, but at the same time, at least you can get the care you need if you need it. So I personally agree that I think it'd be better if they had that available.
All right.
So
well, I think that's about it for us today on making money.
Yeah, just to talk about here in Brazil right now, I can speak about Brazil because many people some years ago they used it to criticize our public healthcare system, but as many people don't have the income as before, they are using the public healthcare system, and they realize that is not as bad as as we used to see on TV. So I don't know how does it work in the US, but here in Brazil, many people used to pay some private healthcare plans, but they realized that these plans weren't good, and they got everything that they used to pay in the public. I don't know how it was the Obamacare, because they said that it would benefit plenty of people. I don't know if it worked when Obama was the president, and Biden wants to reclaim it. How I don't know how to say, how are the plans for this public healthcare system developing in the US, or are these plans still on just on papers to be implemented? I don't know when.
I think the term to describe the U.S. healthcare at the moment is shit show, and I'm just gonna say that, even though this is, and there's no other way to put it. It's we're basically having the government subsidize private healthcare, and if that sounds like a stupid idea, I think it is. So I think we should really, But anyway, that's a loaded question. But yes, you have. But when you have people who make a lot of money off our current healthcare system, there's always going to want to be people who try to exploit people for money. And, it doesn't have as much to do with money as it's just people, right? Money doesn't really change people. It just enhances who they are. I truly believe that. And, the people who are making money off healthcare and things like that want to keep making that money. So we kind of went in a little bit better direction, but we're still trying to just have the government, and that's what we're doing. The government is simply subsidizing private healthcare right now. Really not the best solution.
No.
So are they sorry? Are they subsidizing not private healthcare as to people, just companies? They are subsidizing companies, and then they no.
Well, not directly. There's some tax credits to companies, but mostly it's just subsidizing individuals.
Ah, okay.
But the universal healthcare plans in the US are still all on paper. There's none in existence. Like there was a lot of talk of it during the presidential election, but what we have is still private health insurance, and then there's Medicaid for people who are really poor, but there's a resource limit and an income limit for Medicaid. So if you either have too much money in your bank account or you make too much money a month, you can't be on Medicaid. So Medicaid is anyone could get it in theory, but you have to be poor enough to qualify. And the problem in the US is a lot of people get stuck in the middle where they can't fully afford the private health insurance and all the copays and everything. But they are not poor enough for Medicaid because we don't have a universal healthcare system. A lot of people want it, but we currently don't have one. There was a lot, it's a lot of talk. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare didn't make universal health care, it just got rid of pre-existing conditions being like you can't deny someone insurance now for pre-existing conditions.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So.
All right. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. So next month, I don't know yet what we're going to be talking about, but if you guys have any ideas, feel free to let us know. And we'll be back, I guess. What is it? December?
Maybe job related stuff.
Job related stuff? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Sure. We could talk about that.
And I think the next month it is it is the 16th.
The 16th.
Same time.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
third Wednesday.
Same link and the whole deal. And we'll be back next month for another 2 autistics. And I guess maybe next month we'll talk employment. We'll see. We'll get there. Thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to join us today. I hope it was a little bit helpful for you guys. At least we're talking about reality and we're not just worrying ourselves to death about money. So that's great.
Yeah.
I will see you guys soon, right? Andrew will be back. Andrew and I will be back next month. And I know you guys will see us around on the internet. We're out there.
Look forward to it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.